Okay, guys, hot take. Brave Felix is a good unit. Maybe too good. You know, this guy right here, him, that guy, this fellow individual man creature thing. Yeah, Brave Felix. He does a lot of things in the game that people like and more people dislike. But you may be wondering how to deal with him. Or you might be complaining until he's dead in the water. But you can make the difference, maybe, perhaps. So you won't know until you let me waste 10 minutes of your time and like and subscribe. Cue transition. Step 1. Shield Fighter. It's probably the default option for anything related to Felix tanking, since Shield Fighter just lets you proc defensive specials against Felix on both of his attacks. And it covers desperation stuff, which is pretty epic. Just load on an armor with one of those and you're most likely good to go, but I mean, I don't know. There's always been crazier things. But shout out to Marnie because she just lives anything for some reason. Unless it's Hresvelger, because she just one-taps even if you're at level 1, because Fey balance, I guess. Yeah, isn't that awesome? Step 2. Hardy Fighter, which is basically the Shield Fighter equivalent, if not a bit weaker, but it depends on the unit. But, you know, Hardy Fighter and Shield Fighter, they're basically the same thing. It also works in some cases, which is also very epic, but it also varies on the situation, because you can't use Hardy Fighter on a turn 1 unit unless it's, like, Gatry, and Gatry is good at tanking regardless, but you can't really use it on an Aetherite's defense setting if you want to try that. But I mean, it's still good for other options if you don't have Shield Fighter, and Shield Fighter is also limited, so you may as well do what you can. Hardy Fighter, it's pretty good. It may not loop in some cases, and you know, a Desperation Felix would definitely mess him up, but yeah, no, I mentioned Gatry, and Gatry's pretty good because he just tanks everything, right?
Hey!
Step 3. Use Donald. Just gotta make him a near save, and he'll be pretty good. You know, Lugu's near save. Look at this. Look at this gameplay, right? You make him a near save with Soren, and bam! He can't do anything because Paveyes with Lugu's friend and near save and a slaying weapon, it's pretty good. You know? You just run one of these, and you can probably do it with a lot of other types of units, but Donald's pretty good at that if you want to use him, but I don't know. Step 4. Robin Ice Train works pretty well sometimes, sure, although it can be shut off by other terrain, but that just means you're fighting a player that knows how to use Felix pretty well, and they thought ahead, so, Step 5. Did you try Donald? Lugu's near save is pretty good. You need Soren for that, and you need to kill an Ike. And you need a good unit that can just tank, but it's pretty good. You can also throw a Mystic Boost on there because that also disables any adaptive he might do, which is pretty neat if you just have a really high defense unit. You could probably do it with Lucas. I bet a lot of people have Lucas built. Just do that. It's pretty good. Step 6. Anti-Warping, which, you know, is pretty awesome too, assuming it's a Felix with Celica ring, but I'm willing to bet that there are more Felixes out in the wild with Celica ring than without Celica ring. But, you know, again, that's also just every Brave Felix that matters in the game anyway, so use Gatekeeper or something, or Valentine's Mar is pretty good, but that won't be a turn 1 thing on an Aetherite's defense, and Halloween Nagi is a good shout if you play Summoner Duels, but I imagine that's not really a lot of people in my audience, or in general, because it's yeah, I mean, it's fun, for me at least. But again, that's also under the assumption that it's a Celica ring Felix, which in that case, you move on to Step 7. Let the opponent use an assist on Felix, because there are people that do that, in fact. Yes, they do exist, and you'll know it'll be easy enough to deal with Felix when somebody does that, because nobody should be using an assist on Brave Felix. Brave Felix is very, very, very easy to use. There's not really a lot you could do to mess him up, but that's one of the things, and I guarantee you've probably run into a lot of players that do that, and I guarantee you will still do that. So, you can bank on that, or you can move on to Step 8 and use your own Brave Felix, and, you know, maybe it won't kill their Felix, but your Brave Felix can probably lone wolf to the foe's house and deal with it at the source, although I'm not sure I can advocate for something like that on YouTube because they might just...
I'll handle it.
Step 9. Fire Sweep technically works, right? He lacks Null Sea Disrupt and will most likely never be using Felicia support, so sure, why not? But I don't think every unit can run sweep-related stuff, so maybe Flash or Wind Sweep or, Flash. Yeah, Flash is pretty good. I would do that. Use Flash. That's pretty good. Step 10. Don't move. Unless you have to, but after that, don't move. He can still move, but you shouldn't because that would be bad unless you had. Step 11, AoEs, which, you know, are still pretty good, assuming you do any damage after that, but there's always Emblem Sigurd, and he's basically the same thing, if not worse at times. Felix can deal with Sigurd fairly well if he can reach and initiate combat, but that requires the Celica ring, and that could be shut off, whereas Sigurd just has natural 5 movement to get in your face. You could always use Summer Thor's button to remove Gallop, but that's only for Summoner Duels, and it's a one-time deal, but Nurgle is a good alternative since he could spread it around, and you could seal it off him even by virtue of splash range, since, you know, it has the within 2 spaces condition for some reason. That'll always get around Sigurd. Sigurd also has a lackluster enemy phase, so you could probably just shoot him with magic or double him with any fast unit, and he'll probably go down too. Most of his bulk comes from initiating anyway, so if you could just player phase him, then that'll be pretty good. Emblem Celica is pretty good at that, since she could just warp up to 6 spaces and gets around any sort of anti-warping mechanics, but if he's being protected by a save, then you may want to bring Emblem just in case, or something alongside that, although I'm not sure how feasible it is to bring both on one team, unless they were like an 8th rates defense team on Dark Season. So if initiating on Sigurd isn't an option, then you could always tank him with Tamara or Halloween Asker, since they both have really high defense, which also allows them to heal back a fair bit with Breath of Life, either built into the weapon or C-slot, depending on which one you use, and they'll most likely kill back in retaliation, since, you know, they can pretty much tank the AoE. Just make sure Sigurd isn't running Celica Emblem's effect, or you have some sort of anti-warp support, just so Sigurd has to fight the frontlining tank. Wait, what the fuck am I doing? Step 18. If it's a tank Felix team for some reason, then you could always use a red feud, which is good for shutting off basically all his drive support, but bad because it's stuck on Flavia, and that's not worth it when you can spend orbs on Shield Fighter, which is more worthwhile because it also stops more than just Brave Felix, but that's only on Ice Fiorm currently, and she's a really good unit, so maybe killing Flavia is a better alternative, unless we get more red feud, but I think red feud is in the code, so you could always just grab it from there, but I merged mine, so that's not an option for me specifically, but if you have it, then it could be worthwhile, but there's better stuff in the newer code, so maybe it's not worthwhile in the end.
I'll handle it.
Embla fulfills the same purpose anyway, but if they're running a tank Felix against an Embla team, then they probably deserve to lose anyway. Step 20. You could ban them in Summoner Duels S. Oh wait, you're playing Summoner Duels R? Right. Did you try banning him in Summoner Duels S? At least in favors, it's basically a no-stakes mode, so you don't really lose by not fighting them. Besides your patience, and maybe some of your dignity. But you could definitely beat his ass in favors with Near Save Donald. Step 22, Gravity Install, which is awesome for having him only move 1 space. And then another 3 to 5, depending on how close he is to a foe. But that isn't the worst thing, to be honest. 2BH, to be quite H. Step 23, Outspeed him. Somehow this feels like the worst advice in this video, even with all the joke ones in here. Step 24, stat swing skills like Deadly Miasma and Bonus Doubler 4 and Distant Bonus Doubler and Close Bonus Doubler, although I wouldn't recommend trying to tank him with a mage, but you know, it could always work. The ally check part is really important because he can't shut it off with Endless Tempest. And other similar skills can remove any potential bonuses he might have, so I would definitely consider that. Step 25, Weapon Triangle and Triangle Adept. I think we've all been a bit too harsh on both of these things. I'm gonna be real. Even with all the DR and true DR and the additional true DR in this kit, I think you could pretty much just kill him with a weapon triangle advantage and triangle adept. Spring Xander can probably do it. Okay, but if he had modern skills, he could probably do it.
Yes. Spring is here!
A waste of my time.
Spring's over.
Okay, but if I removed Lone Wolf from his kit, step 27, maybe Swordbreaker would have worked here, since a lot of people don't tend to run null follow-up on him. Follow-up denial has unironically been fairly helpful against scenarios like that, because a lot of the time trying to outsource null follow-up isn't exactly the easiest thing, and that may sound kind of stupid, which in some cases it kind of is, but it also depends on what type of team you're running it on, because in a lot of scenarios it might not be feasible. That being said, you could always run it in the Sacred Seal, but that also means he would have to give up on stats, which would also make the other point, I forgot which point it was, somewhat useful. Maybe every point, because all my points here are very, very useful, right? Am I right? To be quite H. And step 28, last but not least, did you try Shield Fighter? Man, there sure are a lot of ways to deal with Brave Felix, am I right? I'm actually asking to make sure there are a lot of ways to deal with him, right? Although I realize that this doesn't really cover Brave Felixes that are well supported or used by players that know exactly what they're doing a lot of the time. So let's say you run into a well-supported Felix like I don't know. If you run into a Nurgle-supported Felix or Hathorun or anything that makes dealing with him actually tremendously difficult and annoying, then you could use the one tech that is sure to defeat Brave Felix in every scenario. uninstalling or deleting your account.